This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my special guest today is Jackie Martin. Jackie is a keynote speaker, trainer, author, and the founder and chief motivational officer at A Matter of Motivation, a business training and development firm focused on making change happen for leaders and the individuals they lead. For more than 20 years, Jackie has provided training and speaking on engagement, communications, leadership, and change management to organizations in the U.S. and internationally. Jackie is also a contributing author to the Insider Tips book series. Jackie has designed and facilitated training for a diverse number of industries, including banking, medical, engineering, and nonprofit. Today, she'll share with us a few ideas about connecting and motivating at work. Welcome, Jackie, to the podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. So glad to be here. Appreciate it.
As you know, we always start with a few quirky questions to get to know our guest a little bit before we dive into the material.
Okay.
So my first quirky question for you is, what is your favorite guilty pleasure television show?
Well, I am a closet Marvel fan. I mean, I love everything, every movie they ever come out with, every show. And my husband and I just recently discovered that they've made a lot of Netflix shows that are series. And there's a brand new one called Defenders. And it's all the several different characters. We've seen all of their individual shows. And it's just one of those rock'em sock'em fun, good guy wins kind of show. And I don't know. I love it. It's fun.
So you are a closet superhero nerd then.
Yeah, I do. I love it. I don't know what it is. It's just so fun. And it's men and women. And so it's just kind of cool to root for, the hero.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. All righty. And the next question is, tell us something surprising about yourself that most people don't know.
Well, it's funny because I actually went to a university where I majored in journalism, and it's a renowned university for journalism, and so it made a lot of sense for me to go to this university. But when I was asked, well, why did you choose there? It's the University of Missouri in Columbia, and I knew I was majoring in journalism. Everybody thought that was the reason I actually attended there, but secretly, I attended because of the marching band. Because I'm a band geek from high school. I loved it. And actually, being in marching band or in band in general really gave me one of my first forays into leadership. I was a drum major, etc. And I fell in love with that so much that when this university came through, headed off to an away game, they came through my high school and actually performed there. I was so blown away. I thought, I don't care what it is, I got to go there, and fell in love with it. And so I joined the marching band, and I was a drum major there too. I just loved it. But it's funny. So, it didn't have anything to do with my degree. But if I were going to be truthful with why I attended there, even though they had a great journalism, major for me, it was the band. So I'm a closet band geek. No, not so closet. And it gave me, like I said, some real experience with my leadership chops, because trying to lead a group of peers, who are kind of goofballs and want to have fun, was always a challenge, and I learned a ton. So anyway, that's a lot of people don't know that about me.
That is so funny. That is so evidently their Jedi mind trick about showing up at a high school worked because they recruited you right out of that.
That's exact. I'm sure they mesmerized more than me. There were tons of people there in this little town, in the little stadium with this 300 and 400 piece band, anyway. But, it's amazing how much PR something like that can do, to impress people who are younger, and it did me. So I loved it.
Very cool. So you were a drum major, and before that, does that mean you played an instrument and were in the...
I did. So I always played the clarinet.
Okay.
And all the way through college, and loved that. Loved piano, music in general. I just loved all of it. But I wasn't good enough to major in it. I didn't think I could teach it, but I loved the sounds. I loved sort of the experience of it and being in the middle of it. Even though it didn't matter that I wasn't a soloist, just having the sound sort of surround me, I loved that. But I loved leadership too, and so that's when opportunity came both in high school and in college to become sort of out front. That was something I challenged myself to try out for, and was blessed enough to get it. So it was a great experience.
Very cool, very cool. I'm sure you earned it. I'm sure you were very, very good at what you did. Very deserving.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool, very cool. All righty. So now for a little more serious question. What's your story? What happened in your life that got you to a place where you cared about people being motivated at work? What makes you say that work shouldn't suck? That's on your website. Work shouldn't suck.
I toyed around with that comment, putting it on my website, but really it kind of encapsulates the truth. I mean, we spend way too much time, way too much of our blood, sweat, and tears in our work, and rightfully so. And it breaks my heart that when you hear Gallup give the surveys that 70% of the American workforce is disengaged at work, they're just going through the motions, can't wait to get to Friday or retirement or whatever. It breaks my heart. I mean, I think life is too short for that.
Yeah.
And I really had my first couple of jobs out of college were in, starter jobs and things like that. But I soon got with an organization in my 20s that was really amazing. It had great leadership, great opportunities. I was young. They were grooming me and coaching me in a lot of wonderful ways. We were fully engaged. And it turned out during that time I met my husband. He got a job there. We were in it fully. And what we realized was it was really a family environment. I mean, we had this just close-knit, loving, caring. It wasn't just we went to work and came home. It was a full-on experience. And when we started to have a family, we decided that I would be home. And so I started my own business. And through that time, it shifted a little bit. But all the while, as I was then starting to help others in my own business, help others learn how to coach or manage or lead, I kept going back to the reference of this experience of mine and what a life-changing difference it made, truly not just about the work I was doing and how much it mattered, but about how I felt about my coworkers, how loyal I felt, and all of it was part of an experience that built almost like a family closeness. And so now fast forward 20 years, and I'm realizing we've gotten away from that. We've moved away to being worried about doing too much family-owned kind, or we're trying to do leadership in a way that is positional instead of relational, that it's caused some rifts with people or a disconnect that they are just thinking, I'm doing this for the money. I got the job because I needed the money. I'm staying in the job because I need the money. And there's a disconnect then emotionally from what they're doing. So there's lots of things behind that, but really for me, going back to reference that early experience of what I believe it can be, could be, and then starting to look at places where that's not happening, began to make me realize there's a gap there that we need to really help identify and fix for people and for companies.
So tell me a little more about that early experience. What was an example of something that happened that illustrates that caring family kind of atmosphere that you mean?
Well, there were tons of things. They were very dedicated to our professional and personal development. So we each had a fund that a budget that we could use for professional development or even personal development.
So you had your own budget. You had your own budget. You knew what it
Yes.
was, and you had your budget, and you could decide.
We could decide what we wanted to take, if we wanted a certification in something, if we wanted to get some additional education. But they even made it more personal. They actually, because they knew how we feel and whether we're relaxed or whether we're anxious or whatever, those kind of things would affect our work. We actually once a month would have a massage therapist come in, and she would actually do in a room, in an extra room, she would do a little massage for us, and it would be our money, but they gave us the chance to take the time to do that. And it was just a really cool thing that they added on. And I just thought it was a silly little thing. Didn't cost them any money. It gave us time off. But what was funny was the reaction of us after let's say we did take advantage of it. From 12 to 1, you have a massage, 1 o'clock. Boy, you're energized. You want to go back to work. You're excited. And so grateful that they made that available, that if ever you feel that there's something else you might want to do or another company you want to work for, little perks like that can add up to have a really big personal benefit. And so that was just one example of the kind, or a couple of examples of kind of ways they made it personal, and that grew an attachment that you had to not just the company, but then the leaders who were saying that's the way we're going to do things. So I loved it.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I know one of the topics that you talk about is creating more connection into the more connected workspace. So what does that mean, and why should leaders want a connected workplace?
That's a great question. Part of what we're learning so much about leadership, of course, is this shift from the notion that a leader should be separate from their group, that they need to be in a position that causes them to almost be in that ivory tower kind of old school way we used to think that leaders should behave. And that sort of meant there needed to be a separation between themselves and those that they were leading. And what we realized is that just doesn't work. And it really doesn't work in today's work environment. People expect to have relationship. They expect to understand and know and feel connected to not just their workplace, but to their leader. And in fact, the number one reason somebody leaves an organization is the relationship with their leader if it's not good. But conversely, the number one reason someone stays at an organization is because of that same relationship. If it's good, even if there's a better offer or better salary, they're likely to stay because of that connection. But it goes deeper than that. I really feel like a leader's job is not just to connect to them, but that's critical, but also to help the people connect the dots between what they're being asked to do every day and either the overall goals of the organization or their personal goals. I mean, the individual's goals. So the leader has to help them see, look, when you turn that widget and you do it well, it matters. Here's what it does for the organization. Here's how it is the customer benefits. No, wait, here's how you benefit by doing this thing. Sometimes, some employees start to feel like what they're doing is in a vacuum. They don't understand, why do I have to fill that report? I don't get where it goes. It seems to go into a black hole somewhere, and I don't understand it. So then they lose their motivation or any kind of connection to doing it well. So I think that's incumbent on a leader to help connect the dots between what they're doing and they're asking them to do and the end result, so it matters. And then to help connect the whole team together so that they know they matter to each other and that they matter to the leader.
So let's go, so if we could take a step back to something you said about leaders and connecting with their people, and that that they shouldn't be in this ivory tower and that piece. So how does a leader come down from the ivory tower or bridge that gap? What are some specific things that they can do to be regular human being with their colleagues, with their employees?
Yes. Well, it starts with an attitude. I mean, some of it starts on the part of the leader to say, when you're given the hat or responsibility of being the leader, and you put on that manager leader hat, it actually means that you then are now becoming, if one of a better word, many people have heard of servant leadership, but you really now are responsible for the people who are under you, which actually puts you in a position of being sure you're there to serve them, and that no longer is your personal effort all that matters, and you're not being judged just on that. And so that shifts tremendously, because a lot of people, and this is an issue I feel with organizations, they sometimes get promoted to leader for the wrong reasons. And not for their own fault. Maybe they're really good at what they did. They were great in sales. So, of course, the leadership goes, oh, they're great in sales. Let's elevate them to be the leader of the sales department. Well, can we agree that being great at sales and being great at being a leader, they're two different skill sets?
Right.
But so there they find themselves in this position, and now they're trying to figure out, wait, I was always measured by how I did personally, but now what? I'm only measured by how they do. So part of this starts with an attitude, and that you have to begin to go, okay, wait, now I'm responsible for everyone on my team. And when they do well, I do well. When they're not doing well, it's on me. So that attitude shift starts to change some behaviors, and the behaviors may seem much more like, I'm coming alongside you. So if I'm leading a group, then I want to make sure that each individual, every one of them being unique and different, with different goals and aspirations, I need to know what those are, so that I can come alongside them and help get the best from them, and be there to say, well, what do you need? What can I help you with so that you can do the best work? Because as the leader, I know when they do their best work, I have my best work.
Right.
So that's where it starts with the attitude. But the being very clear on what each individual wants for their job and what their goals are, coming alongside them and make sure they see you as a resource, as the leader, and that you're available to assist them. Those are all good elements. And then I would also say to be, at every time you have an opportunity to invest in that person, whether that means walking by and noticing them doing something right, and then bringing that up and come, hey, way to go, good job. Or if there's something that they're struggling with, that you quietly or privately pull them aside and say, listen, I heard you talking to that customer, and if you next time, if you want to say such and such, try that out, because I think you might get a different response. Taking those moments to coach, that's what they're looking for from the leader. And so what it says is, you and your success matter to me. I know they matter to you, and you communicate that in as many ways as you can.
So same question, but as far as developing the connection with team members, what are some things that leaders can do or facilitate to help those connections across colleagues?
Well, that's a great question too, because I feel like there are times when there's siloing happening. And in fact, I just talked to an organization. I was with a Department of Labor career fair today, and I was talking to one of the largest employers up here in the northern part of Georgia, and they are about to have a leadership summit, kind of a retreat thing, because she was saying, this is someone in HR, she said, we've got siloing going on. And so to explain what that means is, sometimes departments or groups or even factions within a department start to pair themselves off. Sometimes it happens that they've been doing something so well, they don't want anybody else to do it, or communications kind of stopping up between the departments or between individuals on the team. And all of that can happen. And that's causing some real rifts within the smooth transfer of information or just day-to-day business. So if it can happen with this organization, it can happen everywhere. So how do you get through that? Well, continuing to foster an environment where we're to be collaborative, There are some organizations that work more on a competitive basis. They kind of foster competing against each other. I think that's a recipe for some trouble. So trying to be sure that as the leader during team meetings, during interactions when there might be conflict, how you make sure that the focus is on collaboration, sharing of responsibility, and sharing of praise so that everybody wins. Sometimes it can be difficult to start, especially if the culture isn't that way. But I think the leader sets the tone on whether that's important. And they set the tone on whether the team is supposed to be working together or not. And so connecting with one another is critical. I'll give you one example. Somebody comes to the leader and they say, yeah, I got an issue with so-and-so. She's not getting those reports to me on time, and it's really aggravating me. And okay, so they're talking to the leader. A leader who wants to foster collaboration might say, have you talked to her? Before, right. I want to have you talk to her, and if you haven't, I'd like you to talk to her first, and then you can come to me, or the two of you can come to me, and we'll see if we can settle it. But how about you go take care of that first, and that what that sends is a message of personal responsibility in making sure relationships are smooth to get the job done. So that's just one example of how they can do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I know one of the things that you talk about are 6 key employee motivators. So what are they, and why should a leader care about those 6 key employee motivators?
Well, let me give you just a couple of them because they can go pretty. Let me just say this: that each of us has intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So the extrinsic motivators obviously are those things that excite us, turn us on, keep us focused, that come from the outside. So that might be an incentive or a bonus, or even our salary could be an extrinsic.
Or a massage.
That's very nice. Well, so those are beautiful. They're a wonderful thing. And they're important that we pay attention to pay structures and our packages that we offer people, even health benefits, all of that. Okay, so those are extrinsic. The issue is, as a leader, we kind of forget about an even more important motivator, and those are intrinsic ones. In fact, when they survey what it is that keeps people excited or motivated in their job, if you ask a leader, tell me what the top 10 are, and they list it, they would probably put salary or financial gain in the top 3, right? But the reality is, whenever you survey employees, it's usually in the bottom 3. Things like knowing what I do matters. Things like praise for my or a feeling of self-satisfaction in my job, a feeling that I'm making a difference. Those kinds of things are intrinsic and so powerful that sometimes leaders forget that that's really what fuels people. Yes, you can give somebody a bonus, but once you've given it, now the motivation is gone, which is why it is a lot of sales companies that have an incentive period notice a huge drop in productivity after the incentive's over. So what's lasting? Well, it's the intrinsic motivators. It's the reason why. And it can be the smallest thing. It could be because, this is where their friends are. They've worked there for 20 years and their favorite people are here, and those relationships are so important to them. Or they feel skilled and important because they've grown so much in the organization that they feel confident because they know what they're doing and they feel skilled at it. Those kinds of motivators, as leaders, we need to help identify and continue to tap into. That's why knowing your employees really well, coming alongside them so you see that, really matters.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So how does a company's culture play into this whole discussion?
So funny that sometimes people will ask me, well, I want to help to develop a culture. Here's the deal. Everyone has one. You may not know what it is, or it may not be a great one, but regardless of whether it's done intentionally, a culture develops. And it really is just a compilation of what it's like to be there. How people treat each other, how people talk, how people interact. Some of it is the actual environment. It could be the physical environment. Are they close around each other? Are they spread more out? It could be the work expectations. It could be just the general attitude of people and what's tolerated and what's not. But that culture is already formed. The question a leader has to discuss or find out is this serving us? Is this as positive as I want it to be? Do we have some issues that we've kind of let go and now everybody's just doing it? I'll give you an example. There's an organization up in Tennessee. It's pretty large, maybe 400 or 500 people there, but they have a zero tolerance for gossip. Now, that sounds like such a silly little behavior, and why does that even matter? Well, as long as there's a water cooler, there could be an issue with it. But here's what happens. Their culture now has built this in that one time you get one time and get caught at it, and it doesn't matter if you're a VP or whatever level, if you're caught again, they're gone. So then you may go, well, why? Why is that such a big deal? Because in their culture, they feel that when that kind of stuff happens, it can become toxic and make people feel unsafe or start to close down because they're worried about what other people will say. So they made an intentional decision to have a little mandate in their organization around the culture they want. And then what happens is then everybody sort of self-polices. Because they don't want to be around that. They don't want to be caught doing it, but they don't want you to do it either. So then they help reinforce that with one another. So that's happening in a good way in your organization, hopefully, but it's also could be happening in the opposite. So leaders need to notice what's going on around them. How does it feel? How does it sound? How does it look? And decide if it's really benefiting their company. And if it isn't, what can they do about it?
So what about a person that's in a larger organization where they may not have a leader, a manager maybe within the organization, but they may not have control over the larger corporate culture, if you will? What thoughts do you have for that person?
Well, okay, so this is my sweet spot. Whenever I do training, it just seems to be, this is my favorite place to be able to make a difference. It's that middle leader. I love speaking to executives, but and I love speaking to people who are on the ground doing the work. But really, that middle leader who's standing in the gap between what's going on in the greater organization or what's being demanded of them by their leaders and then their specific team, and that sort of in the gap person. If they notice, and I've worked with so many who are in this kind of frustrating position. They know their organization overall might have a culture that isn't positive, but they want to make their group different. And so we talk about that. So let's pretend you're the only one, you're the only leader here. And how can you come around your team and begin to create the kind of environment that sets you apart? And even though this is kind of a parable, there's a book called The Fish Principle. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It's been out for a while. It's based on the Seattle fish market. There was an organization. Right. So it was a little parable, but it tells a story about a bank that had this one floor that nobody wanted to work on because it was horrible. The rest of the building was okay, but you never wanted to work for this one floor. And the woman leader took on that group and wanted to make a change. And so I believe the leader, because remember, it's about your personal relationship with the people on your team that matters most. You're like the buffer, or you're the one who sets the tone. So, and in this example, of course, she came in and changed everything, and they rallied around her new culture. Or in some cases, you can pull your team together and ask them, hey, this doesn't, out there, doesn't seem to be working. What can we do differently in our department that makes this a more fun, a more engaged, a more exciting place to work? And let the whole team come up with the ideas that would make a difference to them. Then they're invested in it and are more likely to follow through on it.
Exactly. Very good, very good. Okay. So what if someone is listening and they think, well, Jackie, your advice you just gave sounds pretty good, but that will never work in this company. What thoughts might you have for that person?
Are you saying that the person is the leader? Or
Yes.
just an individual in the company?
A leader within the company, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, kind of like what we were just talking about, I think leaders underestimate their own power to persuade or to influence. And John Maxwell talks about the fact that leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. You either have it or you don't have it. And even in what might be a negative environment, or you may think, I brought that before, I've tried to make changes and I haven't. A leader can make a decision to do what they can. And if you're going to stay in that environment, to be able to, in some ways, maybe insulate and influence your team so that they know that at least you got their back and that you're there in their corner, and that can make a huge difference. Now, if part of me wanting to help people love what they do is sometimes they then would have to make a decision, is this the environment that I'm going to thrive in? And I've seen some really great people leave companies to find better pastures because they've tried everything. And I get it. I'm a believer, though, that you got to try everything, especially if it's a good company and you want to give it your all. But sometimes you have to then ultimately make a decision.
Gotcha. Good. All right. So what are some recommendations, some ideas that you have about making sure you're getting the right leaders and the right employees into your organization in the first place?
Well, let me start with leaders. I mentioned earlier that I feel like we oftentimes promote people to leadership for the wrong reasons. Just because somebody's really good at what they did or do doesn't make them a great leader. It is really a separate skill set. So organizations that identify what those skills are at their organization, what it really means to be a very strong leader. And sometimes they'll even assess those leaders that have that strong ability and then use that as the measurement of what they're looking for in a leader. I think gone are the days that everybody's considered for leader if they stay with the company long enough, that it's a part of everybody's story. It really shouldn't be. We all know people that made it to that position that just should never have gotten there, and they were just promoted because there wasn't anybody else, or they were there so long and that was the next thing on their career path. So what would behoove an organization is to start looking for the qualities first, identify them and start looking for those qualities. And listen, there are some incredible young millennial individuals who have these qualities by nature. They're the ones, if they have those qualities, who should be looked at, even if they're new in the organization, because they have those traits that should then be on that track versus someone who might have been there 20 years and just doesn't have those qualities. So I really feel like that's where sort of the secret sauce is. If you really have identified what makes somebody a strong leader in your organization, get very specific on those qualities, and then go look for those qualities in individuals. Put those people on the path. That's going to raise up people for the right reasons.
Nice. And how about employees? How do we make sure that we get good employees into organizations as well?
Well, so I mentioned I was at a career fair today. And one of the reasons I was there was I was doing a little 30-second commercial workshop to talk about how people can promote themselves to, So what was interesting is I actually went to one employer and I just said, I'm about to do this workshop. Tell me what it is when you're looking for. What would make somebody stand out to you if they came to the table looking for a job? And it was interesting. Right out of the gate, she said energy. I want somebody with energy. And it's funny because that echoes, there's a hotel nearby, and they win best of every single year and actually won a big award for team building. And their people come and they stay in a hotel environment. Even the woman who works at the little counter in the breakfast area, they love working there. It's just such a happy place. So we were interviewing the manager and asked, okay, what do you look for in people? What in the world has attracted these great people? He said, I hire happy people. He said, look, I can train the rest of it. But if you're not a happy person, I can't untrain that. So between her comment of energy and happy, and there's just a certain quality that speaks to being, I love to work with a team. I love to be able to engage with people and my leader, that they show you that from the get-go. It's huge to be looking for the right things. We can teach skills. We can get that through training. What we can't get is attitude, disposition, energy. Those are things that come packaged in that individual. And so just like leaders, us finding out what qualities make a good leader, if you find out what qualities make a strong employee in different positions and go look for the qualities versus just the skills, can make all the difference in the world.
Okay, so what if there's somebody listening who says, I don't think somebody would find me high energy, or I don't think somebody would find me to be like a happy person, or I don't come across like that in an interview. Yeah. Maybe I am at home, but at the interview I get nervous or whatever. What thoughts do you have for that person?
That's a great question. So in that little workshop, we were actually role playing how they would come across. And yeah, I totally understand. There's introvert and extrovert. You have to be yourself. I mean, I'm not talking about try to go woo and be somebody you're not, because that shows too, right?
Right.
But really finding the way to have, see, when somebody's passionate or excited about something, or they have confidence, it kind of oozes out. And it's going to do differently. So if you're extroverted, it's going to be really visible. But if you're more introverted or a little more quiet, it's still going to show in a level of passion or intensity or enthusiasm about the subject or the question. Or, golly, can we just say eye contact? It could be some, and yeah, maybe every once in a while we have to bring our energy up a little bit. One suggestion, I know this is going to sound really funny, but one suggestion I always tell people when they're trying to make an impression as a new employee at a meeting, for example, at a meeting, one rule of thumb is you always want to make an input and do it early in the meeting. Well, people go, what? Well, what if I don't have anything to say? I don't understand. What's important about that? Sometimes the only way you're going to be seen as someone happy or energetic or even interested is you have to put yourself out there. And it doesn't matter whether it's something, low key way you do it or high energy. You're going to have to maybe walk out on that line, make a comment, share something personal, but be authentic in the process of it.
Good.
You'll find the right package that's real for you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Well, Jackie, you've been very generous with your time, but I do have one more question to kind of wrap things up. So in this journey about motivation and connecting in the workplace, what have been one or two pleasant surprises that you've come across along the way?
Well, I have to say that part of my personal journey within this is I also have a team. And I realize, and I'm walking and talking firsthand, some of the ups and downs of building a team that's connected and some of the ups and downs that leaders have. So realizing that it isn't always as easy as, somebody might want to stand up in front of somebody and try to say. It's something that you have to live, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have great days and not so great days at it. But because we're all human beings, I think people, employees, companies even, are essentially and incredibly forgiving. So sometimes when we make mistakes, even as leaders, or we're not as engaged, or we don't feel it as much as we want to in a particular moment, that I know for myself, whenever I come clean on that and I share with my own team, so I try to counsel leaders on that very thing, to be yourself, be authentic. You're not going to get it all right all the time. It's an evolution. It's a process. And ultimately to realize that one of the biggest kind of exciting things for me is this new generation that's coming into the workplace. They really want to matter. They want to do something that matters. They really want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And while I realize there's a lot of talk about their work habits and all of that, the reality is it's so exciting about what could happen if we who are in leadership positions now can counsel them and guide them and mentor, which is really what they're looking for, in a way that helps to build their confidence. And it's so exciting because they really want to make a difference in the workplace, in their life, and they're willing to work to do that. And so if we as leaders can tap into that and find the ways to make those connections with them, wow, it's exciting to think of what's going to happen in our workplace in the next 20, 30 years.
I agree. It's going to be fun watching it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much for your time and being willing to share your experiences and your knowledge with us. We so appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Kelly. Thank you for asking.
This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.